Welcome back to On Therapy with Cy and Paul. I'm Simon Sanborn.
I'm Paul Jacobson.
Welcome to the podcast. If you're a first-time listener, we're really glad you took a moment to spend some time with us. We hope you get some benefit from it. And today we are going to be talking about educators. But Paul, you had some things to share first.
You bet. Simon and I, being therapists, we talk about some things that can be somewhat triggering or might just kind of hit home for some of our listeners. And that can be challenging to deal with at times. So I just want you all to be aware that some of the topics that we discuss can be really stressful to even hear. So I just want to make you aware and just listen in a place that gives you some peace,
Hmm,
uh, and calm, and can help you kind of process what you're listening to.
perfect. All right, Paul, we're talking about educators today. I think I'm so happy when I see teachers out and about in the summertime because I
Me
just so
too.
appreciate I so appreciate seeing them going out and living their lives outside of the classroom because it can be so overwhelming. But and that was one of the benefits of being a teacher. I looked forward to my summers, but that I mean, it wasn't like my summers where I walked out of the building in the first week of June and I didn't do anything until I walked back in August. There's like so much time spent planning for the next year, making adjustments, shifts. In my case, associates may have shifted jobs or been adjusting things in the district. So there's just so many things to kind of keep track of in the summertime, even though you don't have the day-to-day activities. But I think it'd be good to kind of share our experience as educators before we kind of leap in. We have a lot of things to talk about, but do you want to share your experience, what it was to be an educator?
Sure. You bet. Yeah. So, I graduated, got way back. It seems.
You don't have to say the year.
I'll just say that www dot whatever was not a thing.
Okay.
And so, 1994 is when I graduated, and I taught seventh grade science for 3 or 4 years. Um, Also helped out in chemistry and physics labs in the high school level, so that was fun. And then, my whole mission was to become a school counselor as fast as possible.
Okay.
So I went to graduate school to become a school counselor during my fourth year as an educator, and um, then became a high school counselor in a small little district in central Iowa. Then added grades kindergarten through fourth. And so
Hmm.
I was a kindergarten through fourth grade school counselor for about 4 or 5 years, along with a high school counselor. And then I moved to another district, Gilbert, Iowa, and was a 9 through 12 school counselor, I think, for 19 years.
Wow.
And then, I retired after 30, 31 years as an
That's
educator.
amazing. Hey, what was the difference? And that's I think that you'll be able to parse this out. What was the difference between being a school counselor for younger kids like that? I mean,
Mhm.
K through fourth, it's pretty young. And then going to high school, can you just briefly like tell your different
Yeah,
experiences being
yeah,
a
yeah, for
counselor?
sure. Yeah. So the big difference is, um, classroom guidance. And so as an elementary counselor, you are on the teacher's schedule. So you go into classrooms, every day.
Hmm.
Uh, and let's say there's multiple sections of first grade, multiple sections of second grade. And so maybe on Mondays are your first grade. So you go into, one, two, three, or four, or five different sections
Wow.
and do like a 20 or 30-minute spiel. You might read a book, you might do a painting, you might go outside and explore. So you're doing lessons, let's say on kindness or how to play together, uh,
Hmm.
how to follow the rules. You might do things about your family or your pet, or you read books and then have kids, interject little stories about the characters of the book. And
Hmm.
And so you're really doing 20 to 30-minute lessons multiple times during the day. And then let's say on Tuesday or the Wednesday or something, it's second grade and then third grade and fourth grade.
Wow.
So you're really in the classroom a lot as an elementary counselor. And then the in between, you're meeting with parents, you're meeting with teachers and students on a wide variety of issues. You might have different meetings for IEPs, things like that.
Okay.
Where high school, there is classroom guidance, and I was a high school counselor that loved to be in the classroom. And so I would spend maybe 35 to 45 days a year out of 180 or so in the
Mhm.
classroom, teaching all kinds of lessons. But it might have to do more with mental health, with career or college planning, financial planning, friendships and organization and study
Mhm.
habits and things like that. So, uh, there not as much classroom guidance at the high school level, but you're really meeting one-on-one with students and parents and teachers a lot more. And, you know, as an elementary counselor, you're in the classroom a lot.
Okay. And you found, sounds like you found joy in both. Like you got to do different things for each job and got to kind of experience a
Oh,
lot.
yeah. Yeah, loved it. Loved it. And I was very happy like to go down to the elementary and then back to the high school and having that change was really
Cool.
exciting. And um, another thing too at the high school level, I worked probably a lot more with parents.
Okay.
With them just trying to, it might be, just how to parent
Mm.
their student, how to motivate them, how to get them out of bed, how to get them to school. Should they continue with this sport?
Mm.
Concerns about boyfriends and girlfriends and work and teachers. There's just so much. And, over the years, it got to be, probably over 50% of my job was working with parents. So that really changed and actually really inspired me to go into family therapy. I felt like I could work with parents and students in a different way as a therapist than I could as a school counselor.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, well,
Yeah,
let's see. Go ahead.
go ahead, Simon.
Well, I was going to say, so I'll just share mine.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so I came to education late, was one of those job hoppers, couldn't figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. Was going from one job to another, trying just to increase my pay, not really enjoying all of it, but also having really no idea. And also resisting teaching because I'm one of three teachers in my immediate family, my dad and my sister. And
Mm,
then I have four or five, yeah, aunts or uncles on both
yeah,
sides that are
two
teachers. So it's a
family.
common thing in our family. So
Right.
and my grandma on my mom's side, she was an educator at the church that my grandpa was a minister at. So she was in education. I think my dad's first job was in my grandmother's classroom when he was 19, helping out with severe disabled individuals. So that was his introduction with my grandmother. But so I became a teacher when I was 35, again, late bloomer.
Mm,
And when I graduated in December of that year because I had packed some more classes in, and that's about halfway through the school year. And a good buddy of mine who was a principal said, "Hey, you graduated, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you want to go into BDE?" And I go, "Well, it's always been an option." And he said,
Yeah,
because
always an
my
option.
dad's a BD teacher or was a BD teacher before he retired. And he's like, well, if you want to go into this classroom, I have a job for you starting after winter break, and you can just get started. And I was like, okay, we'll just leap into this. And so I joined a behavior focused classroom at a middle school because the elementary school that we were going to be in was getting finished. So the next school year was going to be just the middle school and just the elementary. So they were kind of sharing the building at the time.
Okay.
Um, and so I stayed with that classroom and with that teacher for the rest of the school year. Signed my contract that summer to be the new behavior teacher at the new elementary school because the teacher who was at the middle school didn't want to continue. So I took that position. So I got to start that program in a brand new building.
Mm,
Um, And I had lots of different ideas, you know, of approaches. There's some standard things as a behavior focused teacher you kind of have to be doing. Got to have curriculums for social skills is the main thing.
Yep.
That also, as I learned, requires some education of the paraeducators that I worked with of some of
Mhm.
that content and the information they need to share if they're working one-on-one about things. Like there's other aspects that are fulfilling part of their IEPs if they're working with somebody. So having them educated to that. And my job would not be possible without paraeducators. They're essential to, especially for a program like mine. It's not possible without them. So
In
I
the
really
trenches.
appreciate all those people.
Hmm.
And so I did that for 8 years. Loved it. Made a lot of friends who are still friends today at Echo Hill Elementary School in the Linn-Mar district in Cedar Rapids. Um, and then I went into instructional coaching. So they asked me if I would become an instructional coach to focus on behavior. And so the instructional coach program for Linn-Mar was started by two amazing women. And it really was this immersive thing of where you get to go in and be with teachers and say they have a couple kids in their classroom that are they really struggle with their behavior, right? So there's ample opportunities for, well, sometimes support for those things, you know, getting assistant principals in there to help in moments that are stressful, things like that. There's pieces that could be figured out. But my job was to go in and kind of see what was happening for the teacher, for themselves,
Hmm.
in those moments. You know, if you have a little kid go off, you know, and you have a kindergartner who's, you know, using every cuss word in the book, and you're just
Right.
like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Right.
Being able to, you know, maybe their reaction is like, oh my God, you know, this is not how kids behave. I wasn't raised this way. They should know better. Like, there's natural reactions to things like that. And being able
Right.
to walk through a teacher of like, being able to recognize what's happening for them. And then being able to and then my job was to kind of give them some understanding or some education on where that kid is at developmental wise with their brain, what they can handle, what they can't.
Hmm.
Some kids are emotionally unregulated, and they can be changed by some of the things you can do. So it was more of a teaching of teachers in a way, but it was also the beginning of my idea of therapy. And it was during that time period that I met Dr. Anthony Milky, who I work for now. We
Hmm.
became very good friends from that. And so I was still doing the instructional coaching and I was hanging out with him, and he was talking about the comparisons between the two. Um, and with my ADHD, and it was undiagnosed at the time, I was like, I can only focus on one thing, dude. I'm not doing that. I said, I'm going to be a teacher. I got this covered. And so I finished with my instructional coaching. The program kind of shifted into more of like data collection for teachers,
Ah.
helping with testing, stuff like that. It just shifted a little bit, which
Mhm.
is disappointing because the way these two ladies started this program and the intention behind it was amazing. And I think would have been really, really beneficial down the road. It could have gone two directions. It could have gone down the direction with them and keep deepening this way of understanding teachers and helping them cope and figure things out. You know, I would go into classrooms and I'd have two teachers, one a behavior teacher and another teacher when I was instructional coaching, and they'd sit down with me and they would be talking about what was happening in the classroom before, during, after, things like that. So, um, being able to help them connect and solve the problems, because it's kind of like therapy in the sense of like we don't give answers, the client gives their own answers, right? So it was
Yeah.
kind of similar in a sense of like, okay, you guys are seasoned teachers, you're well educated, you're very
Right.
smart. Together, how can we figure this out? You know, and with simple things like, you know, the behavior teacher stood at the door, holding the door open, and as kids came in, said, "Hi, how are you doing?" Made contact with every single kid as they came into the classroom. The gen ed teacher was there. She did the exact same thing. So just connection, 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 and then hopefully to shift and change how the classroom is managed because they have this, you know, getting these bids for connection going on, and that's kids are responsive to those kind of things. So.
No kidding.
Anybody is, but especially students who, like you said, don't want to be at school or, you know, school's a bummer or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Um, so I did that till the program ended. And then we opened a new intermediate building for 5, 6 grades. My job was over as an instructional coach. So they said, hey, do you want to start the behavior program at this new school? And I said, sure. So I did that. The cool thing is that the teacher that the principal that I had at Echo Hill Elementary School moved to Boulder Peak. So my entire teaching career has been with my friend who I went to high school with, which is
Mm,
I'm so grateful for it. It was just such an
right.
amazing thing to have that connection with him. So I started that program. Um, Derecho hit and destroyed
Oh,
part of the building. If people don't know, derecho is a windstorm that can pop up in the middle of nowhere and have like 70-mile an hour consistent winds, like
or even
great
higher.
crazy. So it blew the roof off part of the gym that was like in direct contact of the wind, ruined the gym. So they had to do a bunch of adjustments, but we still started school. And what's weird is I had taken a tour of the building a week before, and I was like, it was brand new, and it was just so fancy, just everything you would want in a school, open and airy and look nice, and then have a week later be like, we're not, you can't come in the building. It was kind of wild because I would be going
Uh,
in, setting things up and stuff like that too. And we were able to do that
uh,
pretty quickly, but it caused some issues. Anyways, so then that's where I started that program, and I did that for 5 years, I believe. That was through the end of or the beginning of the school year was the end of COVID. And so we were kind of in a weird adjustment period for the
right,
first chunk of school that year. So it was a new building, new schools, new teachers. So huge adjustments for everybody. And then
right.
we had an A-B schedule. So half the classes would show up on one day. So there was space, little,
Mm,
things happening, and then otherwise. But as a behavior focused teacher, I had my kids all day, every day,
every,
all of them. So
of course.
of course. Yeah. Which is much better honestly, much better for them and
Consistent.
and much
Yep.
better for me too. So,
Okay. A good
um,
safe place. It's good.
yeah. And so, yeah, so I did that. And then towards the end, when I decided to go to the marriage and family therapy program at Mount Mercy University, was the last 2 years I taught. And this is the second year that I haven't taught. So it's been a little bit of space, but it was such an amazing time period. It was so fucking hard at times. Like it was so difficult.
Yeah.
Trying to find, because you might have a curriculum for social skills that you like, and that was nice to have the freedom to find things that we thought would be useful.
Yeah.
So I could take the curriculum that I had through the district. I could add Daniel Siegel things to it when it comes to understanding the brain, or not for kids to educate them, but more of like helping teach parents how to regulate. I gave a
Right.
lot of his books to people. So it was
Hmm.
kind of nice to have some flexibility inside of there too.
Yep.
And then it's just difficult too because you have kind of like some freedom in there,
Hmm.
but that was often taken up by managing associates. And that was something that they don't train you in school for is managing people. And you would think like, oh, you can manage kids, you can manage adults. Well, it's a different thing. So,
Whereas,
that was an interesting aspect of my job that I, uh, tried to do the best I could with like relationships and having a group mentality, kind of all be on the same page and supporting each other.
right.
But then, you have personalities and relationships that shift and adjust, and those things get thrown off.
Hmm.
We hired someone because we're just so desperate for associates. We hired somebody who seemed incredible, who ended up almost destroying the program, which is kind of crazy. But like things like that happen that you just aren't prepared for, and it makes you have to be so flexible at times. And with a personality like mine, where I need some set parameters and some structure in place, that was a
Right.
struggle for me because it was hard to kind of find that balance because there was times where there was no structure and that was hard. And then when the structure worked, that was great. But it was hard for me to go back and forth between those two. And this can kind of lead us into our next part of this. And I love your ideas because I don't think I knew I was burned out. I was a
Mhm.
teacher. I had been a teacher for a while. Thought this is just the way it is. It's a hard job, and we're going to do the best we can no matter what. And I think most teachers believe that and think that way. Um, but then after a while, you just start realizing, like, oh man, I all I think about is this place. You know what I mean? Like all I
Yeah.
focus on is this.
And you dream
What
about
am I going to walk into? In my position, myself and my associates, physical restraints weren't uncommon. The last year we had some extremely violent things happen, and
Hmm.
it was scary. It was scary
Right.
to the point where it was hard
Yeah.
to walk in the door. And I knew people that, associates that it was difficult for them to walk in the door at times. Like, what am I walking into?
Yeah, you'd never
Um,
know.
yeah, and so it can be sketchy. So I don't think I realized until, I mean, I think I'm still adjusting, honestly, Paul, is there are still times where I find myself anxious because I'm not being aware of something, but there's nothing to be aware of, right? I'm so used to putting out fires, being able to just like, hey, can you come to this classroom? Boom, I'm out the door. Or just all this random stuff that happened. And so I think there's still part of me that's like, we need to be on top of something because we have fires to put out. We have things to kind of manage.
Yeah.
So that's been a weird adjustment for me. But that's why I force myself, I should say, for kind of like to do Legos or to do or read a book.
Mm.
Like when I
Yeah.
find those moments, I'm like,
Uh,
we're all right. We don't have anything to keep track of. We actually have some space and some freedom. Let's go for a walk. Let's read a book. Let's do something else
Help
in those
yourself.
moments. But
Hmm.
it's been a weird adjustment because that continued all the way through the end of my teaching career, and we were going to school those 2 years. So there was zero time really for any kind of processing, or didn't feel like there was much time for processing um, up to that point. And so it's only been a little over a year that I've had this space. And yeah, it's taken me a bit to adjust, but that
Does.
burnout is so mm, it's a guttural kind of, I feel it in my body, that
Totally.
burnout, that
Yeah.
idea of like, oh, there's no way in hell I can go back to something like that. I mean, I think I could, honestly. I probably approach it so differently, but the level of anxiety, the level of pressure, the level of responsibility, like all those things are at such heavy play for teachers when it comes to burnout. But I would love your thoughts about it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is interesting how, both of us are 2 years out now. Um, and how we still can kind of feel it at times, right? Whether it's driving by a school, talking to teachers. Um, I just had a session today where I showed up to my office and the client was here. It was at my door. And so we walked into my office together, and um, it was uh, they said, "Oh, do you need like a minute to prepare?" And I said, "Nope, I'm ready, and let's go." And it just reminded me, because I actually said it, when I was a school counselor, um, I would walk to my office and there's already a line at the
Mm.
door. Whether it's parents, teachers, students, every day I would walk in, and there would be a line of students there or whoever. And
Wow.
so I just had to turn it on the second sat down in my office. And so, is no problem. But it was a good reminder of just kind of how it was at school. It's just, you're busy, right?
Yeah, and I think too, like I think that's a really good point. I know that if I happen to be late or uh and I'm walking in and a client's there, which doesn't happen very often, thank God. I will say, hey, just give me a second and
Hmm.
I'll come grab you. And I
Hmm.
literally have a little thing. I come in and turn my lights on, set my stuff down, that kind of thing. And then I usually stand from my window and take some breaths and just kind of get myself
Oh,
in the moment,
yeah, that's good.
which all that takes about 30 seconds. And so then I go out and I grab them and we're good to go. But I have to transition
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about so much shit outside of here. When I walk in the door, I'm starting to let it go. And then I come in this space and I try to transition to that in my thinking. Um, and so I try to take those moments where I could just center myself for a second before I
Yeah.
leap into it. But I could see, was that when you saw that client waiting for you at the door, that immediately had you thinking about people lined up at the counseling thing?
It actually was when they said, "Do you need a moment?" Like, do you need
Okay.
a moment? Uh, uh, nope. I'm set. I'm ready to go. So I just put things down. We sat down and got going.
Nice.
And it just I had shared with them, and uh, when I was a school counselor, I just told them the spiel that I usually had a line at the door when I got to school every day. So, yeah.
That's cool. It's nice to be wanted and needed.
Yeah, it was great. Um, so, Simon, you've had some different roles in your school, whether it was really close contact with kids and getting into the classroom and then, it's helping
Mm,
teachers become better teachers. And I would guess that not only were you very keen on the mental health of your kids, your students, but also your teachers, administrators. And, you know, how was it? Like, how were teachers doing? Like, what did you notice? How are our teachers doing out there, you think?
mm, what a good question. I tried to keep really good contact with my gen ed teachers. Like I felt like that was paramount. So I would try to set up times to meet with them and connect and see areas where they're struggling, or hey, your associate's helping this student with this thing. Can I add this kid to it? And that's more of a group thing. For me, I'm always in for that because that's social opportunities, which is we're always working on. Um, so I checked in with a lot of teachers a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes.
I wanted them also to see me, like me, know I'm here for them.
Hmm.
That was really important. So they always knew I was an outlet to help with anything. Sometimes it was just to listen to vent about, even if it was about a student that I had, I didn't take any of that stuff personally. I knew where the kid was at and why they were where they were at.
Hmm.
So I saw a lot. And I guess, well, I saw it from that perspective as a behavior focused teacher. I would go in with my gen ed teachers and talk about some of those things. We also
Hmm.
had PLCs, which are called professional learning communities. And
Yes.
so I often was part of these communities of like, if I stick with Boulder Peak, fifth and sixth graders, teachers, and I would sit down and meet with them, and they would be talking about their stuff, and I would see how I fit in or how I didn't kind of.
Yeah.
But it was often part of those groups where they were talking about the struggles that were happening as the whole. Say it was like a section of fifth grade, and as three or four teachers were talking. Um, and the pressure, the pressure was always on of well, the pressure is this there general of educating kids, right? There's just an inherent pressure of that responsibility. That's your job.
Right.
And that comes with not just pressure to do your job, but like expectations for what that looks like. So it could be, they have to be at a certain testing level. And if they're not, are they getting all the support that's in place? Teachers are responsible for that, checking in with special ed teachers that can come in and help with reading, writing, or math.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of other, if this kid's not doing well, of course they want to help and support them. And so they're going to have these tools, but they still have to go do all that extra stuff with that too.
Right.
Um, and so there's that, you just kind of keep adding those things. So educating a teacher, the
Right.
struggles with trying to get support for people. And then there are district expectations. Are you following this curriculum? Are why are your scores not where they need to be? And I can honestly say, just from my perspective with the teachers I've worked with over the years, I have never met and come across a teacher there might be one in there. I don't want to give anybody too much credit, but I mean, like they were all so good. Like their passion
Mhm.
was what they were there
Gosh.
for.
Yeah.
Yes, they were passionate about it. They thought their job was important. They knew it was important, and their goal really was to educate these kids. Sometimes I think for whatever reason, the parameters that they're given make that hard sometimes. Not
Hmm.
quite sure what I mean by that, but maybe trying to make all these things happen are so difficult. If you have kids or a group of kids arrive that are from a different place, like completely, maybe it's not even America, maybe they're new here, and so they're in a classroom, but they're also getting English learning support, so they can be part of it. They're getting
Right.
support for that, so that's a complicated thing. You get kids from other places that they maybe were in inner city and schools were chaos, just
Hmm.
complete chaos. And
Right.
so being in a classroom where everybody's sitting quietly and listening is a whole new experience for them.
Right.
You know? I had two. kids, a brother and a sister, a long time ago when I was an elementary school teacher, which means they're probably out of high school, which is crazy. Um, and they both, she was in third, he was in first, and they both talked to me about how different the classroom is. And they were very quickly not on my roster anymore because their behavior IEPs no longer mattered. They were in class. They were enjoying themselves. They were learning. They loved it. They loved it, loved it, loved it. And it was just the environment they came from and how they kind of got labeled with that is how they got labeled with me. And that it's only happened a few times where that's taken place, but it has happened where the environment has changed so much that the student just, oh wow, okay, this is great. I just get to hit. I don't have to block out all kinds of noise and all kinds of other things. I can just focus on the teacher and I get a chance to learn. Like some kids really glom onto those opportunities. So there's so much complex things that are taking place, and we're always trying to get better. And so, districts will have new curriculums.
Hmm.
And so there have been times I know of that where a teacher is walking into school, and not the first day of school, we have a good week or so before school, but they're walking into school a week or so before they have to start educating kids, and they're handed a new book that says, this is the new thing you're going to be teaching this year for
Hmm.
math or reading or
Oh
social
yeah.
studies or science or whatever. It's always changing. Here's the next best
Oh,
thing that's
oh,
showing, data shows that if you do it
if
this
that
way, it's,
shows you got
it's, it's
I get that. Yep.
yeah, and again, people are like, "Cool, like that makes sense. That's great," but that still takes an adjustment.
A lot of work.
Yeah, and if you've been, I mean, we all are creatures of habit. So if you've gone, say you have a math curriculum because you're a math teacher and you've been doing this a while, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's switching, and you're
Yeah.
teaching math a totally different way, it's
Hmm.
like, you have to shift your mindset. You have to really shift how you think and how you might approach things.
I think that's
But that was another
easier
thing too that was
than
nice
some.
that as an instructional coach, I got to go in and help with that sometimes. That was kind of nice.
Yeah.
Utilizing that teacher, utilizing their own strengths to figure these things out. But I just think that's so much. I hear people give teachers, shit because they have the summers off,
Mm.
which I would say again isn't really a summer off. It's not like they're on a beach somewhere. Often they can't afford to do that, first of all. But there's conscious thought going into the classroom a lot. I would guarantee you that most teachers
All the time.
would say that
Yeah.
teaching is going to be on their mind most of the time when they're off. Whether it's like, oh God, what's this next class going to look like coming in? Who's going to be part of it? Well, I have behaviors in there because it just makes teaching so hard. And there's just a lot going on for teachers, that you take that and you take low pay, you
Hmm.
take states taking away money for schools, which is happening in Iowa and our state.
Yeah.
Um, it just all you're doing is pulling away resources. And I'm
Mhm.
all down for reinventing or seeing education in a different way to try to see if we can shift it to make it so it's easier for kids or kids are changing and how can we adjust it for them. I'm down with that. But just pulling money away of resources drives me crazy. I'd rather you let these teachers be supported and make these changes. And if that means that at some point the resources are pulled away, then can the resources be put somewhere else to still support teachers?
Yeah.
I just think there's just so many things that are in play for teachers outside of the classroom as well that can really impact how burnt out they are. As a counselor at a high school, did you see that with teachers?
Hmm. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
what'd you see?
You know what, Simon, just real quick, I do want to comment about the pressure, especially at the elementary level, of all the assessing that happens. And let's say you have a 6, 7, 8 year old in your classroom, you have them for like 10, 20% of their life.
Hmm.
Right? And you're expected to make these huge strides. And it's it's the pressure for teachers is just so high, especially when you have all the differences of so many kids and sometimes way too many kids. You might have 30 plus in your classroom or something, and you're dealing with all kinds of behaviors. And some of these classrooms, kids, there might be kids who at home there might be 5, 10, 15 different languages spoken,
Mm,
right? And to try to manage all of this, especially at the elementary level, it is a lot. It's a lot. And things are constantly changing. New curriculum, let's try this, let's try that. And, veteran teachers especially, it's like, what I've been doing is working. Like I feel like I'm finally getting this perfected after 5 years, and
right.
now you're going to change it. Uh, it's it's tough.
It's maddening. Yeah, and when I hear about like schools that have like 40 kids in a classroom, I'm just like, fuck off. That is just insanity.
It
There's
is.
not going to be a lot of educating happening just because of numbers like that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's just
Hmm.
I just can't even imagine the hoops and the circus show that a teacher is going to try to do to try to make that work.
Yeah. Well, and then you brought up paraeducators and the importance of
Mm,
having them in the classroom. And this is, you know, a thing in education where we're getting more and more paraeducators, and that's really fantastic. And we need more adults in the classroom. So helpful.
yeah.
I mean, you have one teacher against 30 some kids. That's tough. Uh,
Yeah.
just having another adult in the room is
Hmm.
very helpful.
Yeah. Oh my God. Even the ones that were a pain in my ass, the associates I had were awesome. Like they just did things. Again, like I said, my classroom would not have functioned without them.
Oh yeah, gotta have this.
It's
So
yeah, I have to have them, and they have to be good human beings. They have to be able to deal with kids who are really pushing back. You know, and so it was nice to be able to inform them a little bit. We had a program at Linn-Mar that started towards the end of my career there that was like associates could get free education to become teachers because we needed them. And I know of at least three or four that utilized that. One was from my
yep,
program.
right.
She was finishing her teaching career when I was finishing the Mount Mercy thing. And so she was the next year moving on to be a teacher, which is awesome. But yeah, they're just so essential. Like you said, another human being. And I liked having a mixture of associates. I liked how, I had one that was kind of a little bit older, in their 60s, and
Hmm.
they were very loving, nurturing. And so we knew the kids that was what they kind of needed, on the
Yeah,
outside of
yeah,
things. And so that's how we paired them up. We
yeah,
needed, some students that really needed to be held accountable, and kind of be on top of, so to speak. And I had associates that were much more intentional and could pull that off in a good way. So it was so nice to have some diversity and then that was also a great bonding thing for us of me saying, what do you guys want to do? And you would have associates like, I don't know if I can work with that kid. And it's like, good, thank you for telling me. So this person can help out because they don't have such a struggle. And that's okay. Everybody's different. So yeah, they're just so essential. But can you give me some thoughts about like what were some of the things at the high school level? I mean, I'm sure they're different, but like how did you see maybe burnout at the high school level for your teachers?
yeah, yeah. And I think uh, one comment I'll make on this is I think each district has similar challenges that they're dealing with and unique challenges too. Like each population of students and families and community c creates a unique challenge sometimes, you
Yeah.
know. So some schools might really be challenged by getting kids to school, you know.
Mm,
In Iowa, there's been so many small schools that have consolidated that some schools, kids might be traveling 20, 30 minutes just to get
hmm.
to school, especially, at the high school level. And
Yeah.
so getting to school can be a real burden for families sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
attendance is a challenge. And so then you think about teachers, uh, you got 5, 10, maybe even more students gone each day. And
Mm,
you're supposed to, be going through the curriculum. But then you have kids who are absent, So you're always trying to have this catch up that's
Right.
happening. And that's very stressful for teachers, and students too. You know that there can be a lot of gaps in what they learned, what they heard, missing assignments, missing assessments. They're not getting all the material to do well. Uh,
Hmm.
so attendance at the high school level can be a real challenge for students and administrators and teachers trying to keep everybody moving forward. Because because kids are missing, everybody's in a different place. And so it's not like as a teacher, you can teach this one day, then move on to this, and then to this, and it's linear. It's not because of attendance.
Right.
You got all kinds of of kids in different places, so that is stressful. And you have parents who want their kids to be in school generally, sometimes not. Sometimes
Mhm.
parents might think it's a waste of time. Oh, my kid doesn't need to go. Or they go on vacations or they go shopping or there's a lot of illness. Um, and just trying to deal with that is challenging as a teacher and a student and a parent. Um,
Yeah.
and then, there's also like in Gilbert, it's a very high achieving district. It's one of the top schools in the state. And so part of the pressure that teachers are in is making sure that students have extremely high achievement. And so you feel like you have to cover a lot of material. These kids are really smart. And so you got to stay, really at the cutting edge and be pushing and pushing and pushing. Um, and parents expect that. They want their kids to be really excelling and be overloaded and just accomplishing so much. So that adds a lot of pressure to the teachers too.
Yeah. And I think too, I think money is an issue as well. I want to say that
Money. Money.
I think I made $70,000 a year towards the end, and that's with my master's degree in education,
Hmm.
and 16 years in. Starting teachers, though, are going to be around the 30 to $40,000 mark starting out brand new. And I think that's difficult I mean, you really have to have a passion for it because you're not going to be paid what you're worth, is kind of how I think of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been kind of when I get myself sucked into Instagram, there's a teacher. I'm so sorry I forget her name, but she's a music teacher and she's got a lot of followers.
Mm.
And it's just her videotaping herself doing her class. And I watch her do her thing, and it's just so amazing how she has these kids' attentions and how she works with their behaviors and addresses them, and like just
Yeah.
fantastic. And I think it's important for people to know that, like, that, sure, that's part of her personality, but that takes work. She put thought and energy into how am I going to approach this? What are some things I can say or utilize? She probably read things to help her get on that page. She probably did a lot of research to figure out what's going to be the most useful tools. So like you can watch her do it and you're like, gosh, she's like magic. She's awesome. But there was time and effort put into to be able to be like that.
Yeah.
So, I think teachers often go above and beyond trying to find ways to educate kids. And again, we're just talking about a lot of stuff that's required of one individual. Here's this whole group of kids you have to educate. And I'm not trying to be crazy about, we making $250,000 as teachers, but I would believe that it would be worth it for our society if we were putting our money where it matters, and if we're going to be pissed about education or upset with how our kids are doing, then I don't think it's taking money away. I think it's putting money into it in the right way. Be thoughtful about where you're putting that money. But that idea that you're going to require this person to have this level of responsibility, you're going to pay them pretty low, like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. And then you have like districts where I know this isn't a thing in our district where we just built a brand new humongous amphitheater that's attached to our new high school. And I don't know, 20, 30 million dollars, I'm assuming. And so you have teachers in that building who will be utilizing that. And it's for the arts, and Linmar's incredible when it comes to their arts, music and drama and things like that. But you have teachers in buildings who are making $30,000 or $40,000 a year, and then the school just spent millions of dollars on something that was important. But that can be kind of maybe that's a disconnect in a sense, but I mean, when I was in that high school building, I loved it. I was proud of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Like, this is great. You're keeping the building up. You're doing all these things, technology. Um, but then that can also be a perception thing too. Why are we spending millions and millions of dollars on this thing when we have teachers who, if we're going to say, let's say they make 40, $50,000 a year. That's okay. That's pretty good for Iowa. But it still isn't like a crazy living wage. Like, I don't think
No.
you're gonna necessarily buy a house with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's limiting a lot of senses. And so I think sometimes perceptions with districts can be, when you ask people about these things, higher up, it's like, oh, well, this bucket of money is for this, and this bucket of money is for this. And so it's like you can't transfer money. Oh, we got this much money for whatever. And it's like, oh, we have 10 million left over. Let's give it to teachers. They just can't do stuff like that.
Right.
That makes sense. But you get these arbitrary things where people, you're talking about human beings that are trying to do this thing. And it feels at times like there's not a lot of value with that because there's not money behind it. And I'm not saying we need to have a bunch of money, but like, how much should you be paid to be doing this thing?
Well, right. And I've often thought, Simon, when it comes to that, is you think of a college student who's trying to decide, you know, I love kids. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to work with these young people, and I love my subject. I love science. I love literature. I love history or math or whatever it might be. And I want to teach it. Like I'm passionate about it. I want to work with these kids, right? Um, but my friends, they're graduating and they're starting out at 60,000 a year, 70,000 a year. And I'm gonna start at, a pretty low wage. I might not even be able to make rent. Or I can't go on the trips that my friends will be going on. You know, it's I don't know. So people will say, yeah, but just think of the difference that you're going to make. You're going to have the summer off, and but that doesn't pay rent. That doesn't buy groceries. That doesn't make your car payment or your student loan payment or,
Mm,
saving for retirement or whatever it might be. And, the cost of homes now, it's like, how are people going to save for this stuff?
yeah.
So money is a huge, huge issue. And if we actually paid teachers, a good wage, we're going to be able to attract more people that we might be losing to, I just can't afford to be a teacher.
Yeah.
We might be able to get some more of those people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if you're listening to this for the first time and you're an educator, I guess we're just telling you we get it. We get the pressure. For Paul, if you want to think about the idea of those pressures, burnout, all that kind of stuff from a therapeutic point of view, like how do you think are some things that would benefit teachers to maybe understand or know more about or could be helpful?
Yeah. So, the big, big thing, and I've said this before in this podcast, but when Dr. Heather, like in the beginning of our program, said self-care is setting clear boundaries. And that hit me so hard. And I think about that all the time and how in school, I really believe this, Simon, and it might be kind of controversial, but I really believe teachers are taught to not have clear boundaries. Like they are taught that we need to constantly be adjusting to our students, our parents, our administrators, everybody around us. We constantly have to adjust to be able to meet the needs of everyone around us. And that's what we do as educators because we care, right? We love what we do. We're so passionate, but we're having to compromise ourselves all the time to everybody else. And we're not ever measuring up. And
Mm.
it's so hard to deal with.
Hmm.
And so, how is it as a teacher that we can start setting clear boundaries? Eh, So, we do have time for our family. We do still have, love and energy in the tank for our own kids,
Hmm.
go to their events, you know? So, we're not, the cost isn't too high, you know?
Yeah.
And, I know teachers who had really clear boundaries with things. Um, I think of a math teacher I've worked with who he came to school about 7 in the morning and kids would show up and he was helping them. And he was a master teacher, many awards. And he put in 110% when he was at school. But by 4:30, 5 o'clock, he was out of there and he would leave and left everything at school. And
Hmm.
he was very adamant that he was not doing work outside of, let's say, 4:30, 5 o'clock. That was his family time. And, he was getting email. There's no doubt at night he is getting email. He might be, getting phone calls and such, but that was family time. And some people didn't like that. Some
Hmm.
people, he probably got some emails at night. He should be answering those. And he, 7 a.m., he was at school, and man, the guy worked. He worked hard, made a huge impact. But he's also one that, for him, he wasn't all that stressed out.
Hmm.
Pressure. There's no doubt there's pressure,
Yeah.
but he had really good boundaries. And I really have admired him that he just was okay with leaving his computer at home or at school at 4:30,
Mhm.
5 o'clock. He's done.
Well, and
And
those boundaries probably helped him be a better teacher in a lot of senses.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because, a lot of teachers go home and, it's like their day is starting at 4 o'clock.
Mm.
Okay, now I got to correct papers. I got to answer email. I got to make
Mm.
these phone calls. I got to prepare for the next week. Uh, correcting papers, reading papers, or whatever it might be. It's updating the website. You know,
Mhm.
it's sometimes for teachers, there's they're just getting going in the letting it all afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I just remember doing meditation, doing all kinds of things to
Mm.
prepare myself to go because I wasn't quite sure what I was walking into. And it was so hard to
To that.
get my mindset like that. So again, I'm bringing that up for the boundaries thing. I didn't have very healthy boundaries with that, where I was, and I don't mean, I think if I had set some healthier boundaries for myself at work, it would have maybe not eliminated, but had helped out a lot of those intrusive thoughts that were happening throughout the weekend. So that when I went into work on Monday, I actually felt like I had a break
Yeah.
over the weekend before I went back instead of having thought about it the entire time and then jumping back into it on Monday. So that would have really helped me a lot to have some idea of what those boundaries are. And I've worked with a lot of teachers over the years as a therapist, and um, it's not always about school, but there is something at play too of that again that back to that pressure of here you might be in therapy talking about personal issues or family issues, things like that. But then you add this other thing on top of it,
Whole
you
nother.
know? And so, I
Absolutely.
mean, when I've talked with educators, I've been like, I just want you to know that whatever we talk about or whatever we process through, whatever this journey looks like together, I totally get where you're at. I Nobody understands you more. I totally understand where you're coming from and what's so hard about what you're doing and the pressure that adds to your life just in general.
Right.
And I have it. I do. It's one of my. I wouldn't say it's specialty, but it would be something I do work with a lot of teachers and love working with teachers.
Yeah.
And I think part of that too is teachers are, at least the teachers I know or have known, are inherently, like you said, these thoughtful, caring people, and they're looking for answers, and they just want to show up the best way they can for
Yeah.
people. And so
Right.
oftentimes talking about how you're showing up for yourself, to your point, is, yeah, that's wonderful. It's so great that you're like that. Are you, where are you at in all of this stuff, you know? And it's surprising because teachers are just like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going for a walk. Yeah, but if you're going for a walk and then all you're doing is thinking about the list of things you have to do for school tomorrow,
Mhm.
is that really freeing you up a little bit of what you're focusing on? Like you have to become, I think you said this in their email, we identify. I am a teacher. I still feel that I am a
Oh yeah.
teacher
Oh
still.
yeah. Right.
Um, and that comes with this way of thinking about helping people or supporting people or how you show up for people or your students. Um, we take on these identities. And I think that might be an area that's,
Who we are.
I don't think it's necessarily a struggle, but I think that's my identity is shifted in a sense of me going to school every day and people seeing me in that role. But I still feel like a teacher. And I think there are aspects of therapy that I'm glad I can show up as a teacher in some of those moments, um, whether it's reflecting the idea of the pressure or whatever. But
Right.
when you think about the identity of a teacher, how we take on that identity, what comes up for you thinking about that?
Yeah. You know, had this happen just a couple of hours ago. Uh, this where my office is right on Main Street in Ames, Iowa. And there's some restaurants nearby that have their patios out and people are eating outside. And before we did this podcast, I just made a loop around the block. And at the restaurant, some parents were out in the patio, parents of some of my past students.
Oh, wow.
And they go, hey, Mr. Jacobson, how's it going? And I go, hey, it's good to see you. Everything good? You know? And I think that's one thing, depending on the size of your community. I know you live in a huge community, but um, teachers have this identity in their community too as educators, right? Wherever they go, the grocery store, a restaurant, to Walmart, to Target, wherever they go, like they know, okay, this part of me as an educator might come out at any moment. Like I might run into a past student, a current student, a parent, administrator, whatever it might be. It's like I have this identity that I'm gonna
Mm,
have to pull from at any moment, you know, because it's just how teachers are. Like they're
yeah.
all right. They always have that part of themselves that might have to show up, right? It happens, Simon, where um, Tammy and I would go out to eat, and like our server's one of my past students.
Hmm.
I go to a restaurant here where like half the staff are Gilbert students. We go, it's like, hey, how's it going? Things are going good. How's school? And all right, hey, like just a week ago, I a guy making my pizza. It just did phenomenal at the state track meet. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. He is just phenomenal. And then in soccer, he's doing fantastic too. And so, doing multiple sports, and at a high level. And he's making my pizza. Oh, man, I have seen you in the news. Phenomenal job. Great
Mm,
job representing the Tigers. And
yeah.
it brings me great joy to be able to say that, right?
Yeah.
It's so cool. But, it's like pulling that educator role out at any moment, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, we definitely identify with this all the time, even after we retire.
Yeah. I used to love bumping into, because most students knew me in the building because they saw me often throughout classrooms.
Right.
And I would bump into them at like Hy-Vee or somewhere like that, and they would
Yeah,
just look at
right.
you. They would look at you. It's like that. Everybody knows
Especially
that
elementary
story.
kids, right?
Yes, especially
So
elementary students. everybody everybody has those ideas. It's just like, oh, they don't know that we're a person, that we're out having to
I
buy
know.
groceries. They just think
I
we're at
know.
school all the time.
Yeah, all
Yeah, which
right.
is it's so adorable. And it's just kind of fun to say hi and then say hi to a parent and kind of make that connection. And then see you as a. But I think that's a really good example, though, of how I think not. I mean, adults don't think that, but like we do kind of isolate teachers into that role.
Uh-huh.
That they we kind of we the society sees teachers that way. And maybe not in the childlike way, but similar of like, then it's like, okay, they're doing their jobs, and then now what are they doing in the summers? Are they just, hanging out and enjoying themselves? Or they, hopefully. But I think we had this idea of just like teachers in a classroom and or teachers in a school. And I think we have that identity for ourselves as educators. And I think society has that idea of us too, of like, oh, everybody in that building's there for kids.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's common. I think it's a common thing. But I love that idea of bumping into students that you've had in the past.
Good.
It's only happened to me one time where I was at an estate sale
Mm,
and I walked into this room that had old radios, which, I like.
yeah.
And this individual turned around and said, "Hey, Mr. Sanborn." And I'm like, "Whoa." And
That's awesome.
I hadn't seen him for years.
Uh-huh.
And they were in high school by then.
Mm,
And I was like, "Hey man, how are you?" And put my hand out and he just grabbed me in this big
I
hug.
bet. I
So
know.
good to see you. And I'm like, "Oh, awesome."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to, well, that's good recognition. As a BD teacher, you're kind of seen as the bad guy, the bad cop often.
Oh,
We're usually the ones that are, if a student's out of control and we have to restrain, that's usually our jobs, and that's not wonderful by any stretch of the imagination. That can make relationships and connection with people difficult, especially kids. So if a situation like that happened, I would have to do a tremendous amount of repair. Not because anything went wrong, but just the negative aspect of putting hands on somebody else. And we're all trained to do this the appropriate way. But it's interesting how, so then it's like, so I have that idea in my head that I'm kind of the bad guy, but then I had this kid be like, "Oh my God, so good to see you." And I
yeah.
know that I had situations with him where there was violence involved on his
Yeah.
part.
Mhm.
But I was like, it was more recognition for me of like, okay, so I was able to repair that. He had a good experience, and he's off into the world. Looks like he's doing okay because he was
Yeah.
with his grandparents at an estate sale. So that sounds nice.
Uh,
So it was, yeah, I think it's good validation, maybe in a sense, for teachers when they see students out and about and they get to have
yeah.
those moments of connection outside of the classroom.
Yeah. Simon, I've had a couple funny experiences, and I know a lot of teachers and maybe yourself have experienced this too, where let's say I go to Target and like a little second grader comes up and they're super excited to see you, and their parents looking at you like, why is my kid coming up to you? Like, who are you? And so I always introduce myself, oh yeah, I'm Mr. Jacobson. I'm the counselor in the school or whatever it might be. Because sometimes it kind of freaks parents out. It's like, who are you? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
I also worked with a lot of teachers when it came to IEPs, individual education
Uh,
programs for teachers. Um, and I think I've had a lot of these ideas in my head for a long time about educators, about the pressure they're under. And um, I know that, so for IEPs, I tried to make it so, teachers were always willing to come, right? And that's after their school day is over and they should be heading home. They usually come to a meeting. Um, their input was so important in those moments to be able to, I'm working on these things as a special education teacher. This is the content they're working on. This is how I'm supporting it. This is how the associate's helping, whatever. Having them part of that was so awesome because they would give so much good feedback. But I always felt bad. I always felt bad because an IEP is part of my job.
yeah.
I guess it'd be fair to say it's part of their job too, but it is extra. It's still extra things they're having to do, and I'm not trying to say that, we all have extra things that we do in all of our jobs, but you take all the pressure and things we've been talking about with teachers, and then you say, "Hey, we want you to drop into this meeting with this one kid who's a real pain in your ass. and see if we can get the parents on the same page and we're all on the same understanding. I didn't have parents who were put off very often. Most parents, if their kid had a behavior IEP, were just so happy to have the support for their
Right.
their, their child. Um, and that often came through in our IEP meetings. And I tried to promote that idea that we're all just there to help. We don't see their kid in a negative way. Um, it is an area that kind of had me thinking about therapy, though. Because I like being of service and I loved being a teacher. But I often would be in meetings or meet parents, and that would give me more information about why the kids struggled behaviorally. And I'm not saying they were terrible parents. Maybe it's socioeconomic things. There's so many parts that play into that. But when you have a parent who you meet, it's like, oh boy, I wonder if this might be an aspect of why the student struggles with whatever. I meet a parent and they swear the whole entire time that I'm talking to them, and I'm like, okay, so this is how they talk at home, and this is why that student talks like that. That makes sense. So it could just be little things like that too. But it was nice to have those meetings so that I could understand more about what's happening for the student in their home life and see if we could help that as well. But there you go, another thing of like, okay, yeah, you know what? I can be in front of the building 15 minutes early to meet them, to get them to the place, to get them lunch, or sorry, breakfast. And that's all extra stuff that I'm willing to do to help the student out and support them. That's above and beyond what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm happy to do so, right? But I think to what you were saying earlier, that can just keep building and building. And then it's like, hey, I have this group of kids after school that struggle with this, and this. Can you help with that? Sure. And so my day begins at
Yeah.
6:30, and then I'm there till 5:30 on some nights. And I think that's kind of what happened towards the end, because I think I've talked about the panic attack I had on this podcast. It wasn't one thing. I couldn't pin, even reflecting on it afterwards, or even now, there wasn't one thing I could identify that caused that to happen. And so I think that's where I fall back on that idea of just overall pressure and the building of things and the requirements and the things that are being asked of you. And it kind of goes to your idea about boundaries and saying no to things.
Yeah.
Saying, no, I'm not gonna, yeah, sorry, I would love to, I can't do that. And being okay with that, knowing for yourself that that's a benefit for self-care, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
We can keep adding on to I'm just a good person. I'm going to do the thing. I love kids. I'm here to help. I mean, we have that mindset. And
Right.
so after a while, you're just like, oh my God,
Yep.
Monday through Thursday, I am a teacher from, 6:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. I
Yeah.
mean, that's definitely happened. So I think I think it's another area of self-care is the boundary of being able just to say no.
Mm.
If you are there every morning at 7:30 to be working with kids on math, and you're willing to do that, and that's part of your day, oh, awesome. Then you have that planned out, and then when you shut the door when you leave at 5:30 or 5 o'clock, you're done. And you've set that boundary for yourself, but that's the extra thing you're also doing, but there's a boundary around it. And I think that's, how do you think it would be beneficial for teachers, or what could teachers set boundaries around that you think would be beneficial to help with the burnout and the stress?
Yeah. Um, I think I, I'm sure this is at every level, but one thing I think a teacher can do is really help in the beginning with students and parents on what the expectations are. So really having a, real clear syllabus and every day, or most days, having very clear expectations of what is supposed to be done and when, what's coming up, clear communication with parents and students, um, and then recognizing the anxiety that our students and parents have, and
Mm,
administrators too. So checking when parents are communicating, students, administrators are communicating to us as a teacher, and checking the anxiety that they're feeling, and that maybe there isn't something we have to do with this other than care and listen and see if we can calm the anxiety through just being there for them,
Mm,
recognizing that everything is going to be okay, right? 99% of the time, when I had parents calling me, they wanted the best for their son or daughter. Right? They wanted the best and they wanted something done about it, right? And with me just listening and validating like the fear that they have
mm,
that something bad could happen, that something isn't the way it should be, and to hear them go through the frustration and the anger, uh, the that they have, the fear, the sadness, the maybe the sense of not being in control,
mm,
to actually hear it. Oftentimes they would get down and say, okay, all right, you're right. Or, you know, Sam, Sam will get this done. They'll get it done. They'll get it taken care of. I'll talk to him tonight. We'll make a plan. We'll get this done. All right. Sounds good. I think that, talking with Sam will be a good way to go.
mm,
Versus me having to walk down the hall and this parent maybe starting the conversation. I need to go talk to Mr. Wilson and I need to tell them that how they're, talking about these deadlines are just totally unreasonable. I need to go talk to that teacher. You know, if I could just hear that parent down and validate how they're actually feeling, I didn't actually have to go maybe do what it is that they initially needed me to do,
mm,
right? And so that would be my advice to administrators and teachers is listen.
mm,
Don't feel like you have to fix every single thing. Just hear people out and validate the anxiety that they're probably experiencing and see, what can be done to make the situation better without having to constantly make adjustments to deadlines, to the expectations on the assignment, things like that.
Yeah, you made me think of an idea. Like, I wonder if, well, I think it would be beneficial if, I'm thinking in professional learning communities or PLC groups at like a school. I think it would be good to have some kind of, and maybe this is a school counselor thing, being able to have opportunities inside those learning communities, whether it's with a fifth grade group or a specials group like, PE or music. I wonder if it would be beneficial to have moments where teachers can really be heard about the stress that they're having, even though they all know the stresses that they're having, but being able to put a voice to it. And so,
Mhm.
like, even having a moment of time in the beginning to kind of talk about the frustrations or the things that are causing us stress, because I think, hearing that a coworker is struggling with a relationship at home, say, because, I walk in the door and I know I have to teach, but I'm still thinking about this thing. Being able to have some normalcy between the two, between people or commonality of things that are stressing outside of work and how it comes into work sometimes and how it makes teaching difficult, or how hard the curriculum is and wrapping their heads around it. I think, I don't think it's necessarily beneficial. I mean, maybe a bitch session is great. I like a good bitch session, but being being able to do that in an intentional, productive way so that somebody is saying, "Oh man, wow, it sounds like it's really hard for a lot of you to come in the door sometimes because there's other things outside of work that's affecting it." Oh, yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And then being able to kind of like acknowledge some of those things, and kind of show some support for teachers in that sense. Um, my first thought is of my friend who's an administrator of like, oh, Jesus, one more, one more thing I have to talk about at one of these meetings, you know. But I think like there could be some supports in place too for for educators inside the building that could be supportive and thoughtful, whether it's school counselors checking in with teachers sometimes, or having a group that they meet at the end of the day where all, the fifth grade groups together and they meet with the school counselor and they talk about mental health for a teacher and what that means or what you can do to help offset the stress or the burden that kind of comes with the job. But yeah, I think if somebody is listening to this for the first time and they're thinking about coming to therapy and they're an educator, I think you're gonna be hard pressed to find somebody who's not understanding to what that experience is like. And you're gonna be able to meet with somebody and talk about those stressors. And I guess to my point a little bit earlier, is you get a chance to talk about it. You can talk about a student who's driving you crazy, and you get to kind of vent about those kind of things, or realize what's happening for you internally in those moments. If you feel triggered because you have a kid throwing a chair and people are going to get hurt, and you grew up with that kind of chaos, and you don't like it. So when that goes off, you don't handle things the way you would like to because you're reacting from a different place. So I think therapy can be one of those things that can access. I think it's kind of in the sense, I'm not sure if I can correlate this correctly, but like I think it's kind of like that gentleman who's the math teacher, that boundary. I think in therapy you can begin to understand what those boundaries are or discover what those boundaries even look like for you.
Sure.
Because we can talk about boundaries and what the hell does that mean, right? I mean, so it's being able to walk through that with somebody who understands boundaries and what it means and what the
Right.
benefits are and how it can actually make you a better teacher if you have some of these other boundaries. Yeah, I'm on two committees. I can't do any more committees. I'm out, kind of thing, and be okay with that. Like, is it, oh, I have a hard time saying no. Okay, well, what's that about? Where else does it show up in your life? That you feel like it's a struggle for you. So I do think therapy could be one of those places. And like I said, I do work with educators, and I think they find benefit from it just because I'm an educator and understand them and can really hear what they're saying and they feel seen. But then also be able to provide tools and different things that can be beneficial to you. Because I mean, I kind of always go back. I don't always go back. Sometimes I go back to that spot of that panic attack and not knowing what it was about. And I'm assuming, like I said, it was all the pressure that was kind of happening. Well, that was grad school and teaching, but it could have been multiple things. But I think I don't want people to feel that way. I don't want teachers to feel those moments of complete exasperation or a panic attack. That's just such incredible information of how something's up and we need to address it. So, how do we go about doing that?
Right. And Simon, with teachers, logically, they may know exactly what they need to do to be able to be under less stress, less anxiety, less
Mm,
depression. Like logically, they might know what they need to do, but therapy is all about when people like they can't get themselves to do it. Like they know what they need to do, but they can't. They just aren't able to get themselves there. That's what therapy is all about.
mm,
It's being able to help people process, you know, things and figure out like how is it that you can implement clear boundaries? Like how is it that we can make that happen? Because you know how it is. We oftentimes have all these goals of okay, next year this is how it's gonna be. Like all summer long, it's like okay, next year this is I'm gonna do this and this and this and this, and then it's like it all falls to pieces
yeah.
September 1st, right? It's like we're not doing it, and that's what therapy's about is being able for people to actually be able to do more of what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap things up, Paul, uh, do you have any lasting words for a teacher and what they're going through?
Yeah, man, I just can't say enough how important therapy can be.
Mm,
Teachers, I mean, this just hits me hard, Simon. Teachers can feel like they're on an island,
mm,
that they are just all by themselves, and that they don't have other people, or maybe it's easier for those people, or they teachers have lots of pride too, and they have a hard time being able to say how hard things are sometimes.
yeah.
And whew, like the loneliness that
Mm,
teachers can feel sometimes. I just really hope that this podcast and other things that we see in the media about mental health and teachers can really inspire people. Okay, I'm gonna see a therapist.
mm,
And I say it all the time, Simon. The most successful people in our society have a team of support around them.
mm,
And sometimes we pay for it. Like we pay for a personal trainer. You know, we
mm,
we pay for people to help keep us accountable, to help us. And
mhm.
therapists can be a great person to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to end it. That's perfect. Well, Paul, I appreciate you today. Thank you for
Yeah.
talking about this subject. If you're listening and you're an educator, Paul and I are in your corner. We get it.
Yeah.
We understand it, and we're here for you. So, if you found some benefit in this podcast, we would love for you to like and subscribe to whatever you're using for it, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And if you're looking for a Psychology Today .com is probably the easiest one. You can look through profiles and look at different things to see if you fit and how it works, and gives you a chance to have a phone call and see how things go. And it's a nice shopping area, so to speak. But I'm going to offer that to everybody. If you're in crisis and you're in an emergency, 911 is the safest thing to do. If you are in a mental health crisis and you need support, 988 is also a wonderful resource if you're in a moment of crisis and you need some support. But we really appreciate you talking with us today.
Take care, everyone. Thank you again.
Adios, everybody.